and again spoke to Mr. Wheeler, is that the no parking signs on Evays, one are politely ignored and two never ticketed, so they really don't do much. There are two no parking signs between Rue de Valor and Perel, covering the first third of Evays. As I say, they don't do much. To me, the one on the side coming into Perel, on the right side, it would be better if you put it a little further down so nobody can block your view as you're making a left turn.
Oh, technical difficulties.
It's okay. Technical difficulties, not a problem. The other thing is, I noticed on one of your agenda items there's a term called calming. Calming reminds me of what was tried with Saddleback Ranch Parkway a few years ago and how it got us a new council member because the natives objected to the way the street was calmed down. Before considering any calming, I wish that the commission would look at the other effects of doing that. Making the road less wide, putting impedance in the middle, something like that is not necessarily always a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
And within time.
So you guys heard his request, right?
We have them noted, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
There are no further requests to speak on the public's agenda.
Okay. So next item on the agenda would be the consent calendar, the minutes.
We forgot.
I'm so sorry. Larissa Clark, please come up.
How could we forget a liberal, Larissa?
I bet you'd love to.
No.
So some of you I've emailed, and staff. So I would like some clear definitions on the new parking enforcement officer. I received a parking ticket on my cul-de-sac, which is HOA owned, even though the city slurries, but it's a closed cul-de-sac. They don't own it. So we'll clarify. But whatever, and that's fine. I've lived there 20 years, never been down there. I'll pay the ticket. That's not my issue. My issue is, you're not ticketing in Heiko's area. Like, is it really prudent to come down Quail Way, the closed cul-de-sac, and give my kid a ticket? That's fine. So let's review the policy and the parking enforcement officer and all that, because I think there are better areas in the city to target for this parking enforcement officer than a closed cul-de-sac on my dead-end street. I mean, come on. Commissioner Pequeno, you're aware of the area or familiar. So if there was direction given to the Orange County Sheriff's Department to just, hang out in your neighborhood more and ticket, I think that's not a great area to send them into. And there are areas like off 2nd Street, over where the day laborers are, off to the Vista Verde condominium complex, by the schools, other places in the city to ticket. So I'll pay the ticket, but I would like clarification and a review of the designated officer and where he is directed to go ticket first. Thank you.
Thank you.
Larissa, what was the ticket for?
Expired registration.
The sticker wasn't on. We had registered it. So it was for not current registration, but we showed them the registration now. It's only the $10 fee. That is fine. I'm not opposed to the ticket. I'll pay it. It was incorrect. I'm just, can we address where you go to the city and
Yeah, I just wanted to understand what it was for, if it was for something else, but thank you.
There's a backstory, but yeah, that's what it's for.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks, Larissa.
No other public comment? Next is discussion item, review of the minutes of the regular meeting, item number 1 from our last meeting. Motion be in order to approve the minutes.
Move.
So moved by Jordan, seconded by Benjamin. Any other questions, comments, concerns? So please vote. Everybody vote? Yeah. Our voting is not voting. Another technical difficulty.
Might have to go old school.
There we go.
All right.
Next item on the agenda is a review of the schedule for the agenda items. So we have before us a proposed schedule for March, April, and into May. Nothing after that. Just an item I would like to have added to this schedule as soon as we can is the Baker Ranch Catalina Drive issue that's come up with a lot of emails and things, some kind of report on what the problem is, what maybe we could do about that sometime in...
Yeah, we certainly could, I think, with the consensus of the commission. At this point, we've actually directed the individual, as we often do in these situations when we have an individual requesting some review. We can do some initial things, ask the radar trailer to be put out, get some enforcement, go take an initial look, but anything beyond that, we normally ask that the community as a whole be represented in a request so that we can justify the time and materials, et cetera, to go out and kind of do a more thorough review, kind of the Peachwood Palmwood thing. So the last I left it with that gentleman was to contact the board and ask if the board felt that was an important issue for the community as a whole. And so we're still awaiting a response from the board one way or the other.
So when you get that response, then you're going to add it to our future agenda?
We would do something similar if we felt there were some very significant changes proposed, as we're suggesting tonight for the Serrano Highlands area where the Peachwood and Palmwood is. We would bring that to the commission. If it was something lesser, sometimes we would handle that at staff level. We could certainly keep the commission informed as to where we were headed with that.
Okay, so please keep us informed on that, because I know there's a lot of people concerned. Any other items?
Just want to make a comment on the record. I'm also sitting on the Baker Ranch Homeowner Association's board director, and I received an email regarding this matter from the management company's director, and I have informed I will recuse myself from any discussion from this matter, just in case this thing came before the commission, so I can participate in the discussion here. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, I got one. A couple items. The first one being the evacuation plan moving to April. I think it might be prudent because I don't want to take staff time, a new chief of police or lieutenant, the fire authority, because I still deem this as one of probably the more important things need to be done, but I think it needs to be heard by council, and I think the time needs to be spent deciding if there's going to be a committee or some type of subcommittee that could be developed to move forward, because I don't want the sheriff's department to put together some report or some presentation that's really not going to do anything. I don't want to waste their time in talking about evacuations or how they would go about it and developing this report when I think the end result needs to be developing a plan. And I think our point got made when we were able to report it to council to add as a subcommittee to actually move forward with completing a plan rather than just a presentation. So it'd be my recommendation to remove that from the April and maybe replace it with Baker Ranch and maybe put it in a holding pattern to see what happens. I was hoping I could get an update from staff as to when that item might be heard by council, if that is in the queue at this point, and maybe when that would take place, so then we can determine if this needs to be done or not. So just wanted to save that time.
I'd just say I know it's being tracked at the management level. I can't remember offhand. I don't think it's been set or for a specific one. Like you mentioned, they are going through the process of selecting a new police chief right now who would have a lot of say in this evacuation plan. So I know it's being tracked right now. And on the tickler it says, let Commissioner Villock know about it.
Awesome. And then I just have one other comment on the permit parking review for the Viejo West condominiums. Was there, or no, sorry, it's the street sweeping that I had the question on. Who's on the street sweeping subcommittee?
It's Councilmember Basil and Councilmember
Robinson.
And we've been working with them for about a year, maybe? About a year, yeah. And then we're going to hold another meeting relatively soon here. We're starting to coalesce around some ideas, and certainly some of the information that came out of the recent satisfaction survey is going to help guide some of those recommendations that are coming from that.
Okay. That's it. I just recommend that we maybe put the evacuation plan on holding, maybe replace it with Baker Ranch.
So what was the concept of this evacuation plan? What was the content going to be?
As we envisioned it, it was similar to what Commissioner Willock was mentioning. We were going to have them come in and give a presentation as to kind of what they do in those situations. We certainly weren't expecting them to develop any type of plan between now and then. It was more somewhat informational for the Commission to get everyone up to speed as to how they do those things. We have obviously a Commissioner who has a lot more experience in that, but I appreciate the comments. If the Council is going to move forward with a true plan, then it's the cart before the horse kind of thing in that sense. So I think we would put it in we might even, just as a suggestion, I was going to maybe start creating a little column somewhere. It's kind of like, put it over here in this holding area, and we won't lose track of these items. We'll just kind of leave them there and ready to be assigned at appropriate time. So we'll start with that.
I agree with Commissioner Vilwalk, because this is a big deal. It's not just traffic issues. It involves a whole lot of city departments and all that. And to me, it should be a plan of the city, not just go to us and then we're going to go, oh, okay, that's good, but what about the rest of it? So is everybody okay with removing that from the April meeting agenda? Okay. Okay. So motion be in order to approve the recommended calendar.
I'll move it.
Moved by Jordan, second.
Second?
Benjamin, all in favor, please vote. Sorry, just vote. I like the hands thing. It's a lot easier. Next item on the agenda is areas of interest status report. Anybody have any questions, additions, comments, criticisms? I don't think we need a motion to do anything with this unless we make any changes. It's more of a receive and file thing, right? Okay, if so, we'll move on. The next item on the agenda is the capital improvement review project plan. That might take some time. I was going to suggest, since I think we have some people in the audience, if the Commission doesn't have any objection to moving on to agenda item 5, which is the Peachwood project. You okay with that, everybody? Or you okay with that, David? Sure. Doesn't. Okay. So, David, if you'd like to do a summary or whatever you'd like to do on Peachwood.
Sure. Let me play with our new toy here a little bit and kind of bring that area into focus since we have this available tonight. So give me a second here. We'll get into that neighborhood.
I thought maybe David would do a small, short presentation, and we'll do public comment on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commission members, audience. Obviously, the Commission members have had a chance to review the report. This report is prepared in response to a letter from the Serrano Highlands Homeowners Association, as well as concerns expressed by some individual residents, both at staff level and at the Commission level. The latest, I want to say, concerns came after a collision, traffic collision that occurred at the intersection of Peachwood and Palmwood back in August. And that's what generated some of the concerns. And as a result, staff completed a review of the area in response to the HOA's letter, which kind of allowed us, as I mentioned earlier, to kind of go out and do some focused studies on some of the issues that were being expressed at the time. As some background, we did review the overall traffic collision history out there. We actually went back 7 years, which is a little bit unusual. Normally, you only go back 3 to 5 years because that's kind of considered the range in which the conditions would be similar over a period of time. But we went back 7 years with the purpose of capturing in the data a collision that was mentioned more than once in some of the concerns, and that there was a fatality that occurred at that intersection involving a motorcyclist quite a few years ago. And so we wanted to make sure our report captured that. What we found in the collision history is that we had a total of 5 left turn collisions, turning left off of Palmwood onto Peachwood over a 7-year period. And in our statistical analysis that we do for traffic collisions, that does not rise to the level typically of where we would consider it sufficient enough or concerning enough to do additional detailed study. Basically, with less than 1 a year, it does generally suggest that there are no unusual roadway conditions. We did also review the sight distance. You have to understand that when we measure sight distance, we measure it from what we consider to be the optimal viewing point. So there is some confusion sometimes. We have conversations with residents that they feel that they should be able to see as far as they need to see simply by stopping at the limit line. The limit line is actually the point at which you want to stop or are required to stop, so you don't hit a pedestrian in the crosswalk. But once you've done that, you are legally allowed to move forward to a point where you can enhance your sight distance. In our world, we normally make that point about 10 feet back from the curb line extension of the cross streets. That's where we take our measurements from. When you do that, as you've seen in the photos we provided as part of the report, you have more than sufficient sight distance in both directions. However, you do have a couple of boxes as you're approaching Peachwood on Palmwood to the right, and what that does, I think it causes drivers to want to keep rolling forward past the limit line in order to get to a point where they can maximize their sight distance. And so one of the recommendations tonight is to put a crosswalk, a full crosswalk across that intersection, across Palmwood there, to try and remind drivers that this is an area where you might encounter pedestrians. You need to make sure you make your stop as you're required, and then you can still pull forward. So that's our recommendation there. We did look at the traffic volumes and patterns, and what we found is that with Peachwood being a 4-lane roadway, which is a little bit unusual in terms of that type of roadway. We consider it what we call a residential collector street. Most residential collector streets are streets that take traffic from individual residential streets, collect them, and move them to and from the major streets. Normally, those streets are 2 lanes, one in each direction, with enough space for parking on both sides. Tom actually helped me with a little bit of the history on this. Originally, like many years ago, that street was going to be, or potentially was going to be, a connector road to areas to the east and to the north, and so it was made or constructed much wider than it normally would have been, because you would have had a lot more traffic. But with the changes in our roadway configurations, that need no longer exists. It basically serves as a true residential collector, like Serrano in that general area, and several other streets, Canada and others that are in that general area. So we do have what I'll call an excessively wide roadway for the need out there. So we did review the traffic patterns and volumes out there, and what we found is that we can modify the lane configurations out there, and the recommendation is to take what we call the number 2, or the curb lane, as you're going from Trabuco up towards the first Palmwood. We have a very heavy right turn movement onto that particular roadway, and what we found is that about 90 to 95% of the people that are in that lane make a right turn onto that roadway anyway. The remaining volume, not only the existing volume, but the additional volume you're going to get with the development at the top, can easily be handled with one remaining through lane. So any traffic that has to go beyond that point can still be handled easily with a single lane. We have had some concerns from individuals, and there is a belief that the latest collision actually involved a situation where, as the person was waiting, was actually a young, inexperienced driver was waiting to make that left turn, that there was a vehicle in the curb lane and a vehicle right behind them and slightly behind them, and apparently the driver thought the first car they saw in the curb lane was going to turn right. They started to go. That other car came around the outside of that vehicle and resulted in that collision. So one of the things we're suggesting here tonight as a recommendation is to convert what is now that number 2 through lane into a dedicated right turn lane. Not only does that help clarify to all drivers where they're turning, because one of the concerns we heard also is that a lot of people get into that lane with the intent of turning right and simply don't signal. And so you have drivers waiting on Palmwood trying to turn, not sure of what these drivers are doing. They're missing opportunities, gaps in traffic to turn, and that can sometimes create some confusion as well as some frustration on the part of drivers. So kind of reorganizing the traffic out there by recommending that number 2 lane be turned into a right turn only lane will help in a couple of ways, as I just described. So that is one of the recommendations before you tonight also. We did look at some other suggestions that were made, traffic signals, full stop signs. As we noted here in the report, there are reasons why you would and reasons why you wouldn't consider that. We did take some traffic counts. We did do some analysis. Staff's experience tells us that neither full stop signs at that intersection or a traffic signal are currently warranted or justified. There was also some concerns about speeding. Right now, Peachwood is posted for 45 miles per hour. We do have the minimum required amount of speed limit signs on that particular roadway. However, staff, in response to those concerns, is recommending some additional speed limit signs as well as the pavement legends that we put on the roadway adjacent to those speed limit signs, again, to help remind drivers of the posted speed limit out there. Finally, one of the recommendations we had, and this came out of where Tom and I had looked at the roadway and talked about previously about how this roadway is really overly wide for what its intent and purpose is currently. We're suggesting that the city consider, that the commission consider recommending a road diet for that roadway. Now, one of our speakers mentioned Saddleback Ranch Road. I feel we have a slightly different condition here in terms of, there's a few things. What a road diet basically is taking a 4-lane road, turning it into a 2-lane road with bike lanes, wider parking lanes, and other things that kind of turn it back into what we would consider to be its appropriate configuration out there. In staff's, at least this staff member's mind, it would be more painted than what you might see up at Saddleback. I don't imagine, because we have quite a few places to make left turns, that we need that space in the middle, and it would be more a just taking of those outside lanes, the curb lanes in both directions, and converting them again into bike lanes, perhaps extending or increasing some of the parking near the park, which we have had some concerns from residents in that area. It'll also move the through traffic out towards the middle of the street. We have some issues or had some concerns from people who live at the lower end of Peachwood down near Trabuco, but the cars kind of coming around the corner fairly tight on the curb because you have those 2 lanes. A road diet would be able to address that, again, kind of pushing the through traffic out and away from that, enhancing sight distance, but without changing the configuration down at Trabuco. We would not recommend a reduction in the number of lanes at Trabuco. You need that to push through the signals. So it really would be kind of a reduction in the number of lanes from just above Trabuco all the way to the end. Something we haven't done here. It's been tried in many places throughout the country. We gave you a fairly detailed attachment here that talks about that a little bit. We think it would be a good opportunity for us to kind of test that approach to dealing with the issues, some of the issues that have been addressed. We also think it would be a great opportunity to look into the possibility of doing roundabout retrofits within existing intersections, which again is something Tom and I have talked about in the past. And had mentioned a couple other locations. There's one later in your CIP that has been a subject of that discussion also. But the idea, at least as envisioned by me, was to see whether or not at the lower end, where Palmwood connects to Peachwood in 2 locations, those would be ideal locations to perhaps look and see whether we could get roundabouts in there. They help to slow and calm traffic. They create a better opportunity for pedestrians to cross at those locations. So, again, we're engineers. We like to try new things. This is a great opportunity, in our opinion, to try that. So that is also one of the recommendations tonight, is for the Commission to consider whether or not that should be studied for potential inclusion in a capital project in the future. So, real quickly, in summary, what we're looking for, or what staff is recommending, is the installation of that crosswalk across Palmwood at Peachwood, converting that number 2 eastbound lane to a dedicated right. I'm sorry, I missed one altogether. Also turning left off of Palmwood onto Peachwood, we want to convert the center median, which now you have to basically wait for traffic to be clear in all 4 lanes before you can make that left turn. At least open that center median, painted median up, and turn it into a 2-way left turn lane. So if you wanted to, as a driver, you could turn halfway into the street and then wait for traffic to clear on the other half, and then pull out in. We've got lots of them around town. I apologize, I didn't go into it in great detail there. I missed that as we were going through here. So that's our recommendation number 3. Convert that again, give an opportunity for drivers to make that left turn in 2 steps if they want to. Install additional speed limit signs and pavement legends, and then conduct that feasibility study for possible conversion of Peachwood through a road diet process, and review in that the possibility of retrofit roundabouts.
Thank you. So we have public comment?
Yes, we do. Karen Palmer?
I'm one of those people who lives at the bottom of Peachwood that you mentioned. I like most of your ideas. I like the roundabout a lot because we had talked about putting a stop sign, but that's not really that feasible because if you know Palmwood and Tamarisk, I don't even know if it's Tamarisk, the next one up, they're kind of off kilter, so you wouldn't be able to do a decent stop sign. But the right-hand turn going up Peachwood is important because what causes those accidents more than somebody trying to cross Peachwood is people coming up in that inside lane and people at the stop sign thinking they're going to turn right, but they don't turn right. In the case of the motorcyclist that was killed, chances are he had his turn signal left on and whatever. So they assume they're turning and they don't, and then they pull out in front of them. So that's an issue there. So we like that idea. The problem we're having is that we'd like a speed bump, to be honest, or the traffic circle would be great too. Because coming out of our little place at the very bottom of Peachwood, even if you did the road diet and they were out farther, it's not a matter of not just being able to see because they're close to the curb. There's a curve there, so you can't see. And so as you pull out and you're trying to be safe, and you first look, make sure nobody's on the sidewalk coming up. You look, and by the time you start to go, they're flying down the street at 55, 60 miles an hour. So if you go into one little lane there, how are we going to get out, period, when you're adding with the new construction probably close to 180 cars coming down the street? So that's our major concern. I like most of your ideas here. I'm just not, I just don't understand the road diet thing, how we're going to get out onto Peachwood if that happens. So that was our main concern, and we wanted to find out about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other? So just for clarification, kind of answer, because I had the same. So if we did a road diet, we're not approving a road diet tonight, but just the concept
is what we're
where they get out at Smoke Tree. I can't remember the name of the street, but that lane on the far right would probably stay there, right? Because it's so close to Trabuco.
Well, we envision, staff would envision picking up the additional lanes. If you can see, I'm trying to use my cursor here, but this is the lower street just below Palmwood that comes out Canyonwood here. And it's on the inside of a curve, as the resident mentioned. It may be one of a couple, but here we would probably look to recommend that you carry that single lane just past this point, and then you could open it up, and that way you'd still have the full capacity down to that point. Another possibility would be to create an acceleration lane out of here by some version of striping and or a hard median that will allow these residents, not dissimilar to what some things have been done or tried or considered to be tried up in the Saddleback Ranch area, Saddleback Ranch Road area, where they would have an opportunity to flow into a lane kind of for themselves while the through traffic went by on the outside. So there's several different ideas that could work in these areas. We would, of course, want to test and understand the total volumes during the peak hour and the additional, what the stacking and queuing might look like. But that was the original concept, because we did know that this was a concern of some of the residents, and if we leave this two-lane configuration above there, it's a little more difficult to try and address some of their concerns.
Do we have any commissioner questions or comments?
I have a comment. So to slow traffic down, I mean, I know it works for me, is the radar that tells you what your speed is. Because sometimes people are driving, they're not looking at their speed, they're just going up. But that, the signs that flash, they'll start flashing like, hey, you're going over the speed limit. That something like that could slow them down, because I think part of the problem here is that the speed's coming back and forth. They don't allow those residents to come out and do their thing.
Correct, and we try to work with the Sheriff's Department as much as possible to get those trailers out there. There's some constraints, because there's
room.
Not a lot of width on the side, but we have occasionally tried to use them in some of the center median areas, so we can try to be creative and do that for them. We could even consider, temporarily closing one of the 2 lanes if we thought it would work in a safe area to try and create an opportunity for that to be out there.
Yeah, I know about the trailers, but there's actually and the place I always see it is when I would go down to take somebody to Santa Ana. There's a sign that flashes when you're going too fast. It's a fixed sign.
Correct. And we do have a couple of those in town. We have a couple on Regency, near Regency Park, where we have a severe sight distance issue that we're trying to address. And we also have one that's been there for quite a while on Saddleback Ranch Road, where we have a very, very steep section of that roadway that's been there for a while. So it's not something that we haven't tried and used before. They are expensive, and we try to use them as one of kind of a last resort. It would be something that we would want to consider from a staff level after put up the signs, put up the pavement legends, use the trailers. If we continue to have significant traffic speeding issues up there, I think that's start to be where you start to go with your thoughts. Yeah.
Commissioner James, did you have a question?
I do. On the coming out of that neighborhood, the first one where you said maybe an acceleration lane, the ones on Saddleback Ranch where they exist, they create a bit of a problem because people think they're a dedicated turn lane and they can just turn whenever they want. I don't think that's the intent of them, but that's how people treat them. And so as you're coming, and again, Saddleback Ranch is a little more extreme than this. I get it, but as a car's coming down the hill now restricted to a single lane, it needs to get over to make the right at Trabuco, and you got a car accelerating coming out of the parking lot at the lower level. It just creates a conflict. I see them every day on Saddleback Ranch, but again, a little bit steeper than the other. I get the differences, but
correct. And obviously all of that would have to be part of the study. You'd have to really analyze that intersection to see what might be the best way to approach that.
Commissioner Vilwalk?
Okay, just a couple comments. I know later when we discussed the CIP that Peachwood and this was tied to possibly doing a 2-for-1 type of study with the intersection of Bake and Lake Forest as far as the feasibility of with the road diet they were going to possibly do the feasibility of a roundabout. Is it possible to separate them? Because to be honest, I'm not interested in a road diet. I just don't think that this is a solution for this area. I have opinion as far as the new homes that are going in there, that you're going to be adding a population. I don't think that it's prudent for us at this point to spend the money or put it as a possibility to spend the money to study a road diet when I think there's other things we should study first and at least attempt the first few before we go down that road. Let's get back to the evacuation point. Road diets are horrible in evacuations. I know that this doesn't have the same type of threat that maybe other areas might. However, when it's already constructed and now you're going to limit it and then expand it, I personally up here wouldn't support a road diet, and I wouldn't support spending the money to even think if this is feasible or not. So those are my comments.
Benjamin, do you have any questions?
Oh, yeah, I do. Actually, I spent about 20 minutes this afternoon around 5 o'clock standing at the Peachwood and the Palmwood there to observe the traffic. I was first of all thank you for the staff here. I think each of the point 1 to 4 does address a conflict point there and can fix the problem at the moment. But I share some of the concern of the Vice Chair too, that road diet seems not a solution here since we have a pretty unique wide under a faster speed limit in a typical residential neighborhood. I think neighbors are already used to that. Our ultimate objective here is we want to reduce the traffic when they approach the intersection and give a safety cross for the neighbors, pedestrian to cross that Peachwood area across the Palmwood, and also have the traffic there can enter into the traffic. So I would think 1 to 4 is good, and we can consider replace the item 5 with a study of whether it's possible to install a roundabout around the area there. Yeah, and also I think the installation of the roundabout will slow down the traffic and give the relief for the next intersections traffic into that traffic flow there. And I want to make a little detail here is when we look at this picture here, it's only 2D, but if you really go into the area, there's a little grading and a little bit zigzag curvatures from the from the westbound traffic there. So the traffic probably driving around 50 miles per hour with a relatively shorter side distance than we expected in the normal type of road we've seen before. So I would think, a roundabout could potentially, notify the resident driver there to slow down a little bit because there's roundabout there. So you're not gonna, fly over anyway. So they can potentially slow down the whole traffic around this area to possibly about 30 to 35 miles per hour, which will be safe for the traffic into the traffic here and for the pedestrian to cross through the number 1 crosswalk we're gonna build. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would want to point out that one of the known benefits of roundabouts is the moderation of speed in and around a roundabout. So you are correct in looking and seeing if that were a possibility out there and was ultimately installed, you would likely see a moderation in speed in and around the roundabout area.
So I drive the street every day. And I got to tell you, coming down the hill, I disagree with a couple of my friends here. Coming down that hill is extremely dangerous, even if you do the speed limit, because you can't see cars coming out on not Palmwood. I can't remember the name of the street after Tamarisk, but that other street that goes into Serrano Park, plus the neighborhood they live in, Smoke Tree. You're going down a curve. They can't see you, and you can't see them. If you're in the right lane, it's really dangerous. I'm amazed there hasn't been more accidents, although I almost got hit by a car yesterday. It seems to me that a good approach on this road diet, which I philosophically don't like too much, but this road needs to get the cars away from the outside. It's extremely dangerous. And maybe what the better approach might be is to just keep this, like Jordan suggested, as a separate thing and study a roundabout road diet combination concept, maybe one or the other, or just a roundabout, not part of something else, because this isn't going to get better. And even the right turn lane onto Palmwood, the problem with people coming out of Palmwood onto Peachwood is they can't see the cars in the second lane. When those cars are making that right onto Palmwood, you can't see this car over here, and you just can't see them. So the right turn lane's good, but it's probably not going to solve all of our problems with that corner. So my suggestion would be items 1 through 4, and then conduct a study of a road diet and a roundabout as one study together. That would be my idea. That makes sense or doesn't make sense, or something you could do, not do?
Well, certainly, as Tom was indicating earlier, if the commission wanted to do a retrofit roundabout study and pick a couple of locations in the city to kind of look at those as potential locations for it, that could stand alone on it as a study, and the road diet here could be separate from that. We combined them because they thought the potential was there, but most of the road diets you see in the literature and stuff are just pure road diets. They don't really incorporate the roundabouts. We just thought that the potential existed here, but they could be certainly looked at standalone studies. If the commission is uncomfortable moving forward with a road diet study for this roadway at the time, you could certainly recommend the first 4, and then we can talk a little bit about what studies might look like as part of the CIP. We could do that also. So we put them together because we thought they had the potential here, but you can certainly separate them and choose to do it.
I am personally in favor of studying a road diet and a roundabout as one study, not two things. 'Cause I don't want to do a road diet and then say, oh, let's now do a roundabout. To me, it's the same issue, right? It's the same problem on the same street. How do we slow down the traffic and make it safer?
Right, and there's combinations, and Tom, I think, has more experience than I do with the roundabouts. In this case, sometimes you have a 2-lane approach that merges into a single lane and it comes out a single lane. Sometimes you have a 2-lane approach to a 2-lane exit. those are things that can be incorporated in and near a roundabout without it being a full road diet from one end to the other of the roadway. So all of those are out there that could be looked at.
Any other comments, commissioners?
I have one question. So on the study of a road diet, what comes out of a study when you do those types? Like, how would you, like, what's the end product as far as, like, what are you looking to get? Is it a grade? Is it a possibility? Or
well, I think what you're looking to do is it the right fit for that roadway? Is it the right fit in terms of existing and projected traffic volumes? Is it going to have benefits that benefit the community? You guys pay attention to the news. There was an attempt to do a road diet on a roadway up in Los Angeles near the Venice Beach, Marina del Rey area. They took a 4-lane roadway to make it safer for the bicyclists, and the motorists were not happy, and they eventually reverted it back to. So you have to balance all of those, the pluses and minuses associated with that. That one, from what I knew, the relatively high traffic volumes on that roadway, nothing like what you experience here. I mean, tens of thousands of cars now, pushed into one lane in each direction. So you have to recognize that it works. It has potential for benefit in some environments, and in some it doesn't. Just on the literature I've read, the seminars I've attended, I looked at this street and said, I think it could. But that's what the study's supposed to tell you. Does it make sense? Will it actually improve some of the, or address some of the concerns that the residents have, whether it's moderation of speed or line of sight, or situations where cars get hidden behind other cars and you're not quite sure what's going on, and so you have to always assume there's a car behind there. Does it create, are there still enough gaps on the side street to turn out onto that roadway once you load the street with the ultimate traffic volume? So it's really an attempt to address traffic safety and traffic circulation issues. It's a tool. And the purpose of the study is to see if that's the right tool for this particular situation.
And I think I know the answer to this question, and please don't throw anything at me, but is this something that we can keep in-house? Is this something with your experience, your knowledge, Dave Anderson, that this is a study that could be done in-house as opposed to consultant?
If we had another one of me, yes.
We're a contract city, right? So we have minimum staffing, and then we contract everything else. So that way we don't have the traffic engineer sitting around waiting for something to do. Absolutely. Right? We definitely don't have that here.
So it sounds like you've got an opinion that you think it could be feasible for a road diet based on your experience.
Based on my experience, based on
but you want to. So we just want to hang our hat on if it's something we go to that there's a study that showed and pointed
right.
that.
And I think as we're doing here, and I hope the commission, we're recommending some things we can do now. These are some of the things we've done on other similar streets. We've had good outcomes with some of these approaches. But this street being what it is, and it's just so unique, and it just, again, based on the volumes we have and the volumes we're projected for that roadway, we've already got other 2-lane roadways carrying more traffic than this roadway will ever carry based on our projections. So we know it can be handled in a 2-lane environment. So that led me to that. Well, maybe this could be a really good example of where a road diet would work. And honestly, like I said, we're engineers. We get a little geeky sometimes. It's National Engineers Week or month or whatever it was. This is something that you don't get to do very often. To try something like that, just like the roundabout retrofit. I think I'd really love to study that.
I can tell your excitement with it.
Yeah,
I can tell it. I mean, you just woke up.
Yeah.
I love it.
So
how about, Mr. Chair? I just have one thought. Would you consider maybe adding it if it needs to be in the CIP or not? But I really like what Commissioner Pino said, and as you mentioned, the downhill speed, putting in a sign that is a radar sign that blinks. As I think that the trailers are one thing. I really think that I actually wrote that down as well, and I think that maybe that should be moved forward with it, and then maybe I could consider doing that same study.
Just recognize that would be a true capital expenditure. It would be, I think they're running around $15,000 a piece now to put those in, and we just, and don't get me wrong, I recognize the concerns within the community. I recognize that the work that we've done, the work that the commission has done. Just off the top of my head, I can think of at least one other street that probably would, if you put them in a priority list by total volume, numbers of concerns, collisions, that would probably be above this if you did a priority list. So the commission is free to recommend whatever it wants, but that's how staff kind of thinks. If we put it there, are there going to be 6 other people coming to us from other neighborhoods going, our conditions are far worse, we should have had ours put in first? So we kind of are in that world. If you were headed in that direction, staff would recommend that you create a program and then create a priority list from that program and work through a priority list in terms of these types of signs.
It might be helpful, too. I think the next meeting we're coming back with the speed limit surveys, so we'll be reviewing all the speed limits of all the streets. So that might give you some more insight into what we're dealing with and perhaps come back with some of those streets and talk.
So we can talk in the next part of our agenda, we can talk about CIP programs, and if we want to continue the discussion about the speed limits warning sign in the CIP section is probably the appropriate time.
In addition to all the studies. So if you wanted to, what I'm hearing up here was certainly agreement on 1 through 4. 5 being something you could talk about and probably should talk about actually in the next agenda item, because we need to rank and prioritize what we want to study, and so this may be one that you want to study, it may not be one. That might be a more appropriate instead of trying to decide in a vacuum on this particular one.
So it sounds like we could use a motion for recommend staff approval of staff recommendations 1 through 4. I'll make that motion. Is there a second? Second by Jordan. Any further discussion or questions? Please vote. That passes unanimously. Thank you, ladies, for coming. Okay, our next is the capital improvement programs. This may take a little time, so I think all of us have read this very detailed report. Great job, guys. You did a good job putting all this together. I'm sure, David, you'd like to do a brief
Right. I think we want
this
to be pretty interactive. We're not here to just describe what's going on and expect a 2-minute discussion and a recommendation. We really kind of wanted to take our time and walk through this a little bit. Tom and I were just talking before the meeting here about that the Traffic and Parking Commission has only been around since August, and all the things that you've already accomplished with the completing the review of the protected permissive left turn phasing study, which of course is incorporated in here, the traffic signal master plan, the annual collision review. So you guys have done a lot already, and so this is your first look, this commission's first look ever at a capital improvement program, and we just want to explain and hope you're receptive to the idea that in our world things take time, and most everything starts with a study to make sure it's a good idea, and then after that study is when we talk about whether or not it should be constructed. And so we've broken the report up into a couple of areas. One where a lot of studies have been done, and there's ongoing projects like our traffic mitigation program through the OSA from our developers that are in town now. Older programs, grant programs, all of those have gone through what I'll call the classic, study it, was it a good idea? Yeah, let's implement it. In some cases, the residents of the county voted and put money in a pool, and then we created all these programs. So all of those things are deep in this pipeline, and some of the things that we're asking or having you look at tonight that have been generated by the Commission, and we appreciate the enthusiasm and honestly the ideas, of which many come from the public, and in this case the Commission, also things that staff may have never really thought of or thought fully about. But some of those they're at that infancy stage where we're going to need to study it to see whether or not it works, how much it might cost, and then eventually push that up to council to see how they feel about that particular or that any group of ideas and projects that might come out of that. So with that, again, I want this to be very interactive. As I structured the report, it really does start talking about some of our capital improvement projects that are already kind of in the works in one way or another. The first one on page 2 is our Lake Forest Transportation Mitigation Program. That's the one that came out and is funded by all of the developers in the areas where we have new homes going in that used to be restricted because it was under the flight pass. So all of that is now being developed. Out of that process came a fee program to mitigate traffic impacts that were identified through our traffic modeling process. So in there, we are currently working on, into the current year, or the current CIP, we're working on the design of a couple of those projects. In this next 2-year CIP, and here in the city of Lake Forest, we develop CIP programs in 2-year increments, so the next 2-year increment is coming up. As part of this next 2-year CIP, we're going to be requesting money to actually build those 2 projects. So that's what we're trying to get to through the design. We've got some right-of-way acquisition, but we're hoping to get within that next 2-year period to the next step, which is at least right-of-way acquisition and hopefully construction also. So those 2 projects, the one is located at, I'll try to use my my map system here as best I can. I prefer Google Maps to Google Earth. That's just who I am. These two projects are one is up here at Bake and Tribuco, and what we have there is, I wonder if it has our, I don't even know if it has our current configuration with our right turn lane or not on this particular aerial or not. We'll find out here. So this Liftum project that we're currently working on, come on, resolve. Okay, there we go. Close enough, right? So we can get a little closer.
So, David, just to make things move along a little faster, I think, because I got lots of questions on almost every one of these, I know other commissioners do, maybe what we do is just take one thing at a time.
Sure.
Let's do the LFTM things, let them ask questions.
Sure.
We'll move on to the FCPP things, ask questions, maybe that make a
Absolutely.
flow a little smoother.
We'll follow that process. You know, now that you've had an opportunity to look this over and see what staff's recommendations are, does anyone have any questions on our first item, which is the Lake Forest Traffic Mitigation Program, or LIFTM as we like to
So
call
the
it?
Bake and Trabuco project is to do what? Is to take some of the property of where El Pollo Loco is and make that intersection wider? Is that the-
Yeah, what you have here would be add a second left turn lane on Bake onto Irvine Boulevard. It would be to add, and in doing so, retaining the 3 through lanes and the current dedicated right turn lane. So in order to do that, we're going to have to take some of this sidewalk and probably this grass strip here and widen the road out to create the space for that. So our 3 through lanes, our current dedicated right, our single left, so adding a second left turn lane. That project would also restore, if you've driven through that intersection, the other opposite left turn lane. We took one away in the other direction in order to create the current condition. It'll restore that. And the project will also add, if this is currently configured, it will add a 4th through lane on Tribuco going northbound up into Irvine Boulevard, and then it'll take one of what is now the number 3 through lane, and it'll allow right turns from that. So long-term study suggests we have need for more right turn capacity here, more left turn capacity here, and more through capacity here.
So this is funded through LFTM funds. Why is it a CIP if there's funding already available?
It's a capital project. It's a construction of something. We have lots of projects within the capital improvement program that are funded in all kinds of different ways. But anytime we build anything, it goes in the capital project.
So when you guys ask for this through the city council, you're not really asking for more money out of the city's
Correct. It's
budget,
not
theoretically.
general funded.
Right.
Right. It's special funded. So we
a
might
pile
be,
of money already sitting there that we're just trying to take.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, there might be gas tax money, projects are in here, all sorts of things like that.
Right. We have a lot of different pools of money that we draw from grant funds, gas tax. In this case, we have a dedicated program here. It's just a matter of us moving these projects forward, in a way that makes sense for us, in a way that we can handle it. Tom likes to point out, our capital improvement division is all of 2 people. That's a half a body more than our traffic department, and they're handling. We must be pushing 30 to 40 projects in
We've
various
got over
states.
50 capital projects, and that includes all the park improvement projects. Council just added another several $1 million for park projects there. So we get a lot going on. We're also, I'd just point out, we are studying also if we widen on the other side to the Edison facility. We're looking at both those options. It's going to depend who owns those transmission, or who is responsible for paying to relocate the transmission lines on that side.
That, to me, would seem a lot more practical, sensible than taking the other side.
So we're looking at it. We just have to know who owns the rights. Edison might have the rights to be there, in which case it would make it cost prohibitive.
Any questions from commissioners on this one?
Mr. Chair. I like this. I drive home this way, and I know that I sit in that left turn lane to make a left onto Irvine Boulevard that goes way past what's cut out for it. There's probably, and it's a pretty big left turn lane. I want to say there's 10, 11, 13 spots, and traffic is horrible, especially at 4:30, 5 o'clock going home. You easily sit through 2 cycles of that left-hand turn lane. So I think this does a lot of bang for your buck, and I think it's going to be discussed later as far as the bake possibly going to 3 lanes is another possible study for CIP project, but I like this.
Okay, then the other one you wanted to talk about was El Toro and Portola?
El Toro and Portola is the other project that we hope to move forward to the next phase here. Let's see if I can get over there.
I think we're starting with the fully funded projects.
Correct. These are the grant-funded programs. We just wanted to describe for you how staff sees these projects and getting to our next phase. As we indicated, both of these projects are already under design, so we're looking to move forward to the next phase.
And there's a description of all, if you didn't get a chance to look at it. The first attachment to this report has all of our current capital improvement programs in there with the descriptions and a map and stuff like that, too.
I guess you need a better computer here. This particular project would add a second left here coming on El Toro to turn onto Portola, and is currently envisioned it would add a second right turn lane, which is driven by the future AM peak hours. There's a lot of belief that obviously a lot of people like to go kind of north and west as they're leaving the area. We have a lot of development in further up El Toro Road, and a lot of people trying to get to the toll road through here. So this has been identified as a necessary improvement. Again, now you have to think 2030 in your mind. 11 years from now is when these.
So where would the second right turn lane?
Second right turn lane would be in the opposite direction on El Toro, going this way. What I'll call, I like to call it westbound and. Or southbound towards turning onto Portola Parkway. So we're going to have a second left turning onto Portola and a second right turning onto Portola. That's the current project as envisioned.
Okay. Questions? No questions? I think we're all saying good, let's go.
Okay, Foothill Circulation Phasing Plan. This one's been around since, as you can see in here, by 1991. There's 3 projects left. Tom can talk a little bit about this. This program did a lot of great projects, including the completion of Alton Parkway, I believe, was funded through this program. So that's it. That was a huge improvement. So these are kind of the smaller project, the last of the projects. We're trying to move through them. We've had discussions with our finance department, who considers that a little burdensome to carry and keep doing all the audits and everything they need to do this program. So they have told us in so many words, please move that project or move that program along. They also feel that we are actually going to finally get enough money to do it. Alton sucked away a lot of money from this program, and there was a belief at one time that there wouldn't be any money left to finish it. Now they are of the belief that there will be money, and so they're asking us to move forward with it. As you can see here, there's 3 projects. The one we want to get moving on this next fiscal or next 2-year CIP is I'll call it the easiest of the 3, and that's a median installation on El Toro Road from Geronimo to Tribuco. Any other questions?
Jordan?
I have one. Can that money be used anywhere else?
No, it is actually restricted to the locations in which the traffic impacts were identified and the mitigations were specifically detailed in that process. I know medians don't sound like much, but what they really do is they actually help in the world of collisions is what they really do, which is a little unusual for this project. These kinds of projects to have that, but raised medians tend to separate traffic, reduce the potential for cars crossing center or painted medians. It was a little unusual when we saw it, and here we go. Yeah, maybe it's it's not quite what you normally see, but it does have some traffic and transportation related benefits, so we suspect that's why it was put in there. So, but the program itself is very specific. In essence, you shall use the money to do these things. Sometimes there's some flexibility, but very little typically, and in this case, these are pretty much locked in.
Okay.
Yeah, this project's been around, FCPP's been around since '94, if I'm remembering serves me correctly,
Yep.
or maybe earlier.
Maybe even earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, the original FCPP draft had Alton and Bake being done at the same time. And then
I think that was the
Alton
plan.
was taken out.
Yep, until they ran into the hazardous waste from the jet fuel.
Yeah. Okay, so assuming no other questions on that?
Okay.
I have a pretty simple one here. It says that all three should be closed as soon as practical, and in the end, they say the staff recommendation here is for the fiscal year 2019, 2021, and the 2021 and 2023. So I just wonder, what's the practically time these three things can be complete?
Well, I think part of what Tom was referring to is we have a lot of projects that are in some phase of design, review, construction, and it in a perfect world, if we had lots of extra staff and even the ability to hire consultants is a time-consuming project. You still got to oversee it, and so we're kind of in a bind in the sense of we're maxing out on our staff's ability to not only put projects out, but even to contract with consultants to move projects forward. So if the money's sitting there, in theory, we could just move them and build them, but there's constraints on the staffing side and just getting things done. So that's why we put kind of what I'll call like a 4-year horizon to finish this, and I think that's reasonable because some of these are going to take some extensive design, some right-of-way acquisition. All of those things take time, but we wanted to take the easiest one first, get some of these projects going. But the intent is to move as quickly as possible, and we think that's a reasonable time frame for us.
Okay, that brings an additional question here is, what's the criteria you cite the priorities for the projects in the pool?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
Do you set how do you prioritize all the projects?
Just like you're doing right now. Just like you're doing right now.
Okay.
In terms of how sometimes it's staffing, sometimes it's dollars, sometimes it's availability of grants that might come up. So it is you're literally participating in the process in which we normally go through at staff level, management level, and council level. We have discussions, we talk about all of those things, and out of that comes the priorities.
So and the city council has a 5-year strategic plan. They're looking forward 5 years, and they're putting these. So these have been in the queue for a while, and now they're coming up as other projects fall off and kind of move it through. So think of it kind of as a conveyor belt of, you go from idea to study to design, right away, construction. Each one of those processes can take, a year to cycle through and get another budget for it. So once you get going in it, it kind of starts moving its way through the system.
All right, thank you, Tom. I just want to conclude my comment here is apparently in the city of Lake Forest, we have a new development on the east side along the mountain here and the old neighborhood along the I-5 in the west. So I think that the projects along the I-5 should have a little bit of priority there in general because they are bringing the blown out traffic congestion there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm done here. Thank you.
So we're all okay with everything priority. We just want everything done in 6 months.
Exactly.
Excellent. I expect no less.
Or 5. 5 would even be better. Okay, so hearing no more questions on that one.
Okay,
frankly, nothing we can do about that anyway. It's an FCPP thing. It's fun to
Right.
discuss the
It's going to
project,
move
so-
forward. Again, we're
Right.
just trying to show you kind of how this is the down in the weeds process that we kind of go through, as Tom and I have both mentioned. The next one is the OCTA, Traffic Signal Synchronization Program. So that's OCTA-TSSP. So there you go. We've got 8 letters for that one. Currently, we're working on El Toro, the signal coordination for El Toro, all the way from the 5 freeway, all the way to the last signal out in the Ridgeline area, out in the Portola Hills area. That's underway. OCTA is leading that project, which is pretty common for our small cities. They lead the project. We work with them and to get that project done. That's underway. That will probably take about a year to get that done. We have also just recently put in funding application for Lake Forest TSSP. That would go all the way from Portola all the way out to where it terminates out in Irvine, out by Laguna Canyon Road, basically, way out that way. We've gone into with 3 cities. We put in our application. We're waiting to hear from OCTA whether or not we get that funding. If we do, that project will move forward within this 2-year time frame.
Can you clarify something for me? I must have read, seeing city council meetings, 5 programs to synchronize Lake Forest Drive over the last 15 years. 5 on Bake, 5 on El Toro. What are we doing? Why do we keep doing it? Is this just a rehash? Is it fixing it? What is it doing?
Every 3 years, you become eligible again for money for the program from Measure M2. Traffic patterns change over time, so you want to redo it and relook at it. You can get new equipment changes, or upgrading equipment inside the cabinet.
So it's basically an update. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Do we, and maybe my sheriff counterparts or past sheriff counterparts know, do we have the signal prioritization on our emergency vehicles here in Lake Forest for all of the traffic lights?
We have all of them. Well, the answer is not yet. We actually have a current project in our current CIP to complete the emergency vehicle preemption system in the city. We have about 20 signals that currently do not have it. They are part of that program. That program should go out to bid sometime in early summer and be done probably by the end of the year, at which point we will have every single traffic signal in the city with emergency vehicle preemption.
But the main streets have them, though.
Correct.
Yeah.
Most of the ones we're talking about are we'll call some of the quieter parts of town, the Ridge Route and Mural, some of those areas like that. The big major, the Bakes, the Lake Forest things, they have them, but some of the quieter intersections on some of the quieter streets do not have them yet. They will as part of that program.
Just for point of reference on that, that started when I was working here as the chief of police, and I left in 2005.
So do you have one of those buttons in your car that makes the light turn green?
He's got the clicker.
Oh, darn.
So on traffic synchronization, since we maintain our own lights, is that correct? A majority of them are city lights?
Correct. Well, yeah, we have 100 and something that are either in the city or on our borders, of which we operate and maintain 91 of those. So, yeah, 90+% of the ones that you would consider
Lake
Lake
Forest.
Forest
So do you have the
are.
ability to turn lights green and red locally from one location, or do you physically have to go out and program it?
No, we do have the ability to monitor as well as make timing adjustments remotely. We don't have it internal. We have a consultant who takes care of that for us. They produce reports in the morning about things that might have happened, but you can do it remotely. We have about 7 signals left to connect to that system. Some
That's
of them are
just
part
for
of
the timing changes?
Well, you can do pretty much.
Control the whole light?
You can control. In theory, you could tell the signal to go into red flash. You could do quite a few things with it. It doesn't. We don't have CCTV cameras. We don't have that. We have the loops, and they're represented as graphics on the computer screen when you bring it up, and there's other diagnostic tools.
So if something happened on a Tuesday at 2 p.m. and there's a wildland fire back in Portola Hills, could you turn all the lights on Lake Forest going towards the freeway green?
Yes.
And keep them green?
We could.
Thank you.
Okay.
We could. What would happen, I don't know. But there is that, you could just literally,
A lot of cars backed up at the freeway.
yeah, a different direction.
Everybody who's trying to escape and turning from Bake to Lake Forest will get stuck.
Absolutely, there's definitely a lot. I just didn't know if that was a technology.
It is technology that does exist, and we can make those kinds of adjustments. You could, absolutely, if you needed to, you could force greens.
It works better with cameras,
Oh, yes, far
right?
better.
So you can be in that lab, and you've all seen it in the movies, right?
So is that something like Irvine has?
Yes.
Okay, so they have like traffic monitoring, right?
They have
right.
traffic
Irvine, Anaheim.
traffic management centers where they literally have
Yeah.
extensive CCTV systems where they can look at intersections. They could see, for instance, like a collision at an intersection and go, oh my gosh, they just blocked 3 of the 4 lanes.
Has
Now
there
we're gonna
ever
give
been
them
a
more
thought on, obviously with a smaller contract city, we're surrounded by a lot of smaller contract cities, but maybe having a joint powers of authority with a multitude of cities to have that traffic center that could control those lights? I'm just thinking at 2030, right? Maybe not today, but is that ever been discussed or thought about between the traffic
There's
engineers?
been, before my time, there's been some studies to set up a traffic management center, the cost and stuff. It's outrageous, cost-wise. You're talking fiber optic because of the bandwidth for the cameras, all the camera systems, and then hire somebody to sit there and watch the cameras. So it's not a cheap endeavor. It's done. Obviously, other cities do it as the need arises. I'd say our city is pretty normal in terms of traffic flow. It's regular. Let's put it that way, right? It's predictable. It's regular for the most part. So the studies I've seen, which were, like I said, before my time, it's just cost prohibitive, and so they never moved there. As technology gets cheaper, maybe, but then again, as technology changes, they might all be computer driven by Google and right. I mean, technology is doing some strange things, so we'll see what happens. Yeah. But great idea. I wish we could go there. Maybe someday we will.
So the next part is the Bake, Baffin Bay. Staff will concur with the TPC's recommendation to first study, implement, and evaluate alternative measures for Bake and Baffin Bay.
Yes, this is the second category here, Traffic and Parking Commission kind of projects and reports that you reviewed. First one is the Traffic Signal Master Plan. Out of that master plan discussion came 2 basic recommendations. One was to not consider a traffic signal at Bake and Baffin Bay at this time, but to study alternative measures out there, which is very, very common and a very reasonable approach for that one. And so,
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we agreed to.
right, I think
not
that's
changed.
That's
right.
Santiago, El Toro, and Live Oak. Staff has a little bit of a need to have a discussion here. Obviously, the commission was not in favor of putting a traffic signal there. Staff has a concern that perhaps we're a little bit exposed liability-wise because we now have our own study that indicates the signal is a reasonable thing to consider, as well as additional developer studies in the area that identify that as a long-term location for a traffic signal. As opposed to just leaving it off the plan entirely, staff is suggesting that it either be included as part of the 2-year CIP or at a minimum be included on the 5-year strategic plan list, what we call the parking lot of projects. That way at least it's in our system. It's there. If ever came to an issue, we could say, yes, we studied it, and yes, it's in a list of many future projects out there. So again, we understand the concerns on the part of the commission, signal spacing and other issues, but again, we think there's a reasonableness to at least having it on a list of future projects to protect us from the things that unfortunately happen in this world.
So if it was on the 5-year strategic plan, what would that mean?
It means it's just in a group of projects for consideration as you go forward in your capital project review program.
So next year, right, these projects, we finish this set of CIP projects, they come up again, we address them if the funding's available, if you, council, whoever, right, wants to move forward with it, they do. But it's on a list, so when, just from a liability standpoint, we say, hey, cities get more coverage from a liability standpoint. If it's on the list, we're moving forward to it. The courts recognize you can't afford to do everything all at once, and so it's better than just you had a study and you ignored it, and now there's more liability because of not taking action.
Okay. So is everybody okay with that, or do you want to?
I just have one quick comment on it. I think the only problem I have, and maybe this is just the word or the wording, but further along on page number 10, the comment there is to include installation of a traffic signal at that location in the 2019-2021, or the 2-year CIP or 5-year. I guess I'm just not comfortable with the wording that to include actually installing a signal as there. I think, from what I remember, up here I was comfortable looking at it again in 2 years. So not adding it as that we're going to do it, because I recall the study that it was somewhere in the 40 range point-wise and maybe 30s, and you were more comfortable normally seeing in the 50s and 60s.
It fell below kind of the normal, typical, but it met a lot of warrants. And like I said, we had that study. I'll just explain to you real quick what, in staff's view of this, we would like to see it included. But if the commission is still uncomfortable with it, we'd like to see it at least in the 5-year strategic plan, and that's what this process is about. So you are correct. In their staff was kind of pushing, and we think we should at least consider it. If the commission still would rather not consider it as part of the 2-year CIP, we request that you at least recommend it in the 5-year.
So if it's still, to repeat, if it's in the 5-year strategic plan, the city council at any time could put that on a CIP project, correct?
Well, they only typically do it every 2 years. City council can put any project anytime.
They could make a motion at the meeting in September.
Anytime, but that's something that we would recommend in the 3 to really the next cycle. And I think maybe it'd be worth Dave talking more about what the concern is out there, that particular signal, with allowing people the gaps in traffic to turn left, and the potential liability out there for maybe a better understanding of what that warrant really meant. Yeah,
basically what, as you're aware, I guess I can just zoom in on it here, so you can go to that real quick. It's a one-lane road in each direction, so you have that situation where, as additional development continues to occur in that area, you tend to have fewer and fewer and fewer gaps in traffic at an intersection like that. When you have fewer and fewer gaps in traffic, you have individuals that will start to take chances, and when they start to take chances, you're more likely to have traffic collisions. What we have seen, and what the study was indicating, is that there is starting to get a fairly significant queue of vehicles, particularly in the afternoon peak period, on Live Oak, trying to turn left out onto Santiago and El Toro. And again, that's part of what those warrants, signal warrants, are measuring, is the inability of people to find appropriate gaps to make that particular turn. I don't know why it's not loading. It must be night. That's why this must be a live camera.
Dark out there.
What's going on? So that was kind of what drove those underlying warrants that were currently met. In addition, as you know, there's continued development in the canyon out there, both kind of north and east of this intersection, as well as south and east of there. So you're getting additional vehicular loading on it. The conditions will only get more congested, fewer gaps, and that's kind of where staff's opinion, we kind of had reached a bit of a tipping point out there with that particular intersection. So again, staff would prefer that it be included as part of the 2-year CIP, but are comfortable with at least having it in the 5-year strategic.
So if you put it in the 2-year CIP and it's presented to the city council, with the comments to the city council from you guys and your write-up of it, that the traffic commission does not feel a need for this right now?
Yes. We would definitely include the range of comments on that.
So it's just my understanding here is majority of the commission do not think we need it right now based on the current traffic volume, but it's staff recommendation here to put in the parking lot of the 5-year, because that way, just in case something happens, it share the city from liabilities.
Right, and then we'll talk about it again in another 2 years.
Right.
We'll come back and we'll say, hey, has it changed? Let's relook at it. Accidents have increased out there, or it's fine. Nothing's going on, no complaints, whatever, right?
So, but once this one goes to the council, if we want to do something in maybe 2 years later, we'll come before the commission again, or we already prove here, I just go to the council directly?
So every 2 years, we'll come back to the commission, and we'll do the same exercise, just like we go in front of the council.
Okay.
Our role is to transmit the commission's feelings, so all of these projects, as we roll them up, along with all the other projects that we do to council, we haven't figured this out yet, but, we'll have a note or asterisk or however we describe the projects, and traffic commission, approved this, recommended this, totally disagrees with staff here, whatever it is that you guys are saying, we will convey that to council along with our own professional opinions.
So if it's in the 2-year CIP, the council would be told, yes, we want to consider this, but it's ultimately up to the city council because the traffic commission doesn't think it's necessary in the 2 years. Or, if we put it on the 5-year plan, the council will still see the 5-year plan with that light listed as a potential project, correct?
Correct.
So either way, the council would know that it's being talked about. Now, I'm afraid they're not going to hear anything about this, right? Because I know some of them have expressed a concern about this intersection. And if it's in the 5-year plan and they don't see it, I want to make sure they would see it if it was in the 5-year
So we bring the 5-year plan to the city council.
At the same time.
At the same time. So we talk about all those projects. They can move projects around. They can do whatever they want,
And they have
obviously, being the city council.
Sometimes you're right. Sometimes for their personal experience or other reasons, they'll take something that staff or a commission says, maybe next time, they go, nah, we want it this time.
So if in the 5-year plan, they will have the visibility of that potential project.
Correct. Along with the acknowledgement that traffic commission recommended it to be there and not to be installed at this point in time, but
to your CIP.
I think
to
we're
be
all
looked at.
okay with that concept, I think, right?
Talking about being in the 5-year.
5-year plan, yes.
Okay, so we're already at 8:25. I want to try to speed up a little bit, guys. So we have the next is the
Protected permissive left turn phasing study. As you recall, there were a total of 6 locations at about, Tom and I believe it's closer to $1 million to do all 6 of them. It's appropriate for the commission to kind of, I think even when we took it to the council, they all kind of went, wow, that's a lot of money. We probably can't do it all at once, but we should consider doing something. Because they agree they want to move forward with this, introduce it to the community. So from the commission's discussion and from the council's discussion, out of that came a recommendation to you tonight to include 2 locations, Town Center and Marketplace, which is the only location that has proposed protected permissive in all 4 directions. We thought that was unique enough, and in an area where you're going to get a lot of the community going there. We all, I don't even live here. My father lives here, and everybody goes over to that shopping center, whether it's Walmart or Target, so it's going to get a lot of use by a lot of people. We thought that was a good one to start with. And the second one we thought was reasonable to include in the program was Rockfield at Center Drive, kind of for the same reasons. It's close to the freeway. You get a lot of different people using it. In that case, it's only on the side street on Center. But we thought those were 2 really good locations and a good start for this program. And the last one was the pedestrian phasing change at El Toro in Toledo. I won't go into all the detail, you guys. I hopefully kind of remember what that was all about. But what that'll do is allow us to get more green time in El Toro, which is a problem in the morning. And we think that's a great and simple project to complete. So that's that's out of it.
I was at the city council meeting when the PPLTs were discussed. The only thing I ever remember was one council person saying, do we have to do all of this, or can we do some of it? It wasn't a council direction or even any discussion. Somebody answered that person's question, say, yeah, you don't have to do all of it. So I'm okay with this. I think it's fine. We've got to start somewhere.
Right.
I don't think we're going to get $1 million for PPLTs, guys. Unless anybody has any other...
I like the staff recommendation.
I do too. I think that, we get both ends of the city involved, because then that, because I rarely drive. I live right there on Rockfield, so I rarely come this way. Mm-hmm. And so getting used to that for the people that live on that side of the city, that when they do finally see them.
Irvine's putting 2 in on Rockfield, just on the other side of Center Street. Yeah, that's what they've been doing out there for a while.
Yeah, but they're not on Rockfield, they're on the side.
Correct.
Just like ours, they're on the side street.
Yes, it's a start.
Yeah.
If these do move forward, and get selected to be funded in the CIP, will you guys come back to us with how they will be rolled out as far as the education campaign? Because I know I had some concerns with the consultant that came in that discussed what their methods of how they typically advertise this, and I just want to make sure that maybe the commission, especially as this being new, that we do it right from the start and maybe have some eyes or some.
We can certainly, obviously, Irvine just did it. They must have, I'm sure, had a fairly robust program. We've had our own ideas. I mean, beyond what the consultant has already done, you put out message boards. There's a lot of things you can do to try and really raise the awareness on it. So.
Completely agree.
Benjamin?
Oh, yeah. First of all, I say I've been to all 3 locations, and I think the first one, the town center one, the marketplace, is really a good pick. And I've been living around the country, so the PPRTP is pretty popular measure we use around the country, and I was just kind of surprised, like, Forest just began to adapt it. But my concern here is whether the local residents can adapt this kind of thing really quick, because especially for the town center and Market Drive, you don't have a pattern there because it's a middle of the shopping center there, and you have people cross drive all the time. So what kind of thing we can put into the effort to reach to the local driver, have them become a little bit aware of the change of traffic pattern and the device here, because it can be a major one in our city. Some people, not me, but some people may not be used to it.
Right. That's the biggest concern with these.
Right.
And so we'll roll something out. We'll bring it back to the commission when and if these projects get funded and get rolled out.
And I know we have an excellent communications team here. They've been doing some wonderful stuff. And I think this would be a perfect instance to use that text message system that they've rolled out and haven't utilized yet. But those are the types of things that I think the community wants to hear. And I think that's the platform that a lot of us want to hear it on, is right to your phone, simple text message, and with a link that could maybe expand on a press release that could maybe detail it and show some maps. But I think that would be an excellent.
I think we've got a lot of information from our satisfaction survey that we get that the residents speak as to how they like to be communicated with. The electronic ways are up there, but I'll tell you that leaflet that goes out, people still love that. So we would absolutely look to hit all of those electronic mediums, mail, and of course the physical ones that are out there in the real world when you start to roll those out.
Maybe we could have an interview with the traffic engineer there and put a picture, and then maybe talk about how it hits.
It would be like a mayor's minute.
I'll make that motion.
Yeah, with Dave.
Okay. What more
Dave
question?
Roger minute.
I'm sorry, Chair.
Yes, sir. Sorry.
Oh, I got one more question here. Just looking at the 3 projects, they have a drastic difference between the estimate cost there. So could you give a little insight why the cost is so different?
Well, the first one, you have to do some median modifications.
Okay.
So we have to tear some medians out, pave it back. So there's just more work involved for the first one. The second one is more of a striping change and a little bit of signal modification, and the third one is even less work. It's a very minor signal modification. So you have physical construction and a signal modification, most expensive, mostly signal modification, little less expensive, or kind of in the middle, and the final one is just a minor signal modification.
Gotcha.
So that's why you have the different prices.
So since we have a limited funding here, so going forward, are we going to have some kind of cost-benefit approach so we can do the
That was
lower
in the
cost?
original PPLT program. It paid off like $20 million in savings over 20 years.
It was huge.
You know what we can do, actually? Because you weren't on the commission when we went over all this. We have all that information. We could give you a copy of the report that has the cost-benefit.
Got you.
There you
Sorry,
go. Here you
late
go,
for the
right
party
here.
here.
Some extra reading for you tonight.
Don't have to do it tonight, of course, but I have a copy.
And there's-
for my reference, but it's perfect. You can look that over, and if you have any questions, you can call us.
Oh, got you. Thank you. I asked for it.
And you all, actually, Commissioner James doesn't have that either.
There'll be a test on it next time.
So we can, we can make a copy of it and
Great.
mail it all to you.
I just happen to have that one on hand.
So the next one is Regency Park. So you're recommending a study to see if we could use the park parking lot or not?
Yes, that came through you as part of the permit parking program.
The city council already approved that, I think.
Council expressed an interest in it, so you kind of feel like you need to at least acknowledge that it's already kind of gone through a process, and at least when we get to the back end here with the studies, that's probably a reasonable thing to do for those reasons.
So the next one is Lake Forest Drive at Trabuco Road, Lake Forest Drive at the mobile station, making a right turn only lane. That's to study that.
Right. I think here we've kind of moved over into the category of first steps, studies that we're talking about, from suggestions and ideas that have come from the commission or others in this case. And so we have a total of, we've got a little list back here somewhere, a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, might be more if I flip the page here.
Handing out you guys pictures. Pictures are 1,000 words. The next couple ones. At the bottom there is the one we're talking about, Lake Forest Drive at Trabuco. This is near the mobile gas station as you're coming down the hill on Lake Forest Drive. And I took just a couple of pictures of midday and early evening, and the right turn lane backs up for a very long way if one person decides to go straight. Now, the problem with that solution of making that a right turn lane is they'll move cars into the other 2 lanes, and they could back up the hill further. I understand, but I think that's why we need to do this study.
Right, and I think that's real. This is kind of where we're at, and sometimes you can look at an intersection like that and say to yourself, I think that might work, but in our world, that can't be how you approach things. You have to decide and do some due diligence to see whether or not it actually does make sense. And if not that, is there something else? I'll just give you a real quick example here. There's 3 potential solutions there. There's taking that number 3 lane that starts fairly close to the intersection, making it a dedicated right. You could widen the roadway, keep the 3 through lanes, and make a dedicated right. You could also do what we call a partial widening, where you make a really wide number 3 lane that's wide enough for a car to sneak past them and make a right. So just off the top of our head, there's 3 potential solutions out there if we felt we needed to accommodate that particular turn. So that's one of the reasons why you have to do studies, is to figure out, one, does it make sense, and if so, what's the right approach? So that's when we talk about the studies. Now in here, you guys saw in here we have the council puts aside money every year for the commission to do studies. Now, the studies you do come from above down to you, but this is an opportunity for you to suggest ideas to the council, who can then turn around and say, yes, we like that idea. So that's kind of where we're at with this grouping here at the end of the report in terms of suggestions that have come up for, as we just described there, Lake Forest and Trabuco, Trabuco Road and El Toro, which, by the way, Commissioner James picked up on the fact I had the word Lake Forest under that one. It should say Trabuco. And we appreciate Mike finding that for us there. Bake Parkway from Trabuco Road.
Well, so the 2 right turn ideas, Lake Forest at Trabuco and Trabuco at El Toro, were just studies. And did you have questions? I think.
Yeah, I did, Mr. Chair. Thanks. So I think I also used to drive this road before I moved. My wife would always admit cutting through the gas station. Mm-hmm. So this has been a problem for a while. I would like to throw out there, and I probably know the answer that you're going to give me, Mr. Wheeler, but let's also suggest some money be put aside to do something. Because if this CIP we're moving forward for 2019 through 2021, before we could possibly see any work being done, if the study determines it, I would love to just earmark some money, something that I know can be done, and if it doesn't deem necessary to move forward with anything, then the money can go back into the general fund, or could be maybe used to fund something else. But I think this one's extremely important, and that would just be...
Yeah, because I was going to make the same comment later on, because what we're really doing here, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, is we're putting money in for a study that'll take 2 years, maybe, and then another 2 years to get capital funds to do the work that the study said are obviously needed. Can't we put in the capital funding request? The study is $20,000, and the estimated cost of the work is 50,000 or 100,000.
And therein lies part of the concern, is that we don't know what the answer to the...
If you're buying property from the gas station,
But you
million,
guys are...
$2 million?
You guys can come up with some kind of number. Come on. I think it's not fair to us, and I don't think it's fair to the city council to say, well, let's study it, and then 2 years we go by to study it, and then we got another whole year process to get the work done. It's just, it's too slow. Can't we come up with some minimum, maximum number?
Well, I look at Tom, but I mean, the council does do a mid-year, at least has
mid-year CIP.
Mid-year CIP.
We've done that before, too.
Right. If the studies can get done, studies can get done within the first year, and these types of studies are not, these are not the kind of studies that are going to take a year. They're going to take 6-9 months, depending on the extent of what you need to do and the availability and everything. So these are not 2-year studies. So, but the studies do need to be conducted in order to figure out what and we can talk about niceties and necessities. In this case, this particular intersection meets our level of operation that we consider satisfactory. So the question is it necessary based on that standard, which is the standard we apply everywhere? The answer is no. Would we love to have a dedicated right turn lane there? Absolutely. Every major intersection, I would love to have a dedicated right turn lane, and 2 left turn lanes and 3 through lanes. The question is that the appropriate use of that money at that time? So part of what the study does is it's going to look at that question, but it's also going to look at just the practical nature of it. And you can, and we have, and we just did, go to council at mid-CIP with some course corrections. One example would have been the Lake Forest TSSP program. We didn't have money set aside for that. It became a good project. We were prompted by OCTA to go after it, so we went to the council and said, hey, I know you didn't give us money a while ago, but we have this great opportunity and this great project, and they looked it over and said, okay, we're going to give you some money. So the time frame you're describing can occur, but it can also occur in a more compact time frame.
I think one of the challenges is we don't have unlimited resources, right? And so if you want to tie money up in a CIP project that may or may not go forward, you're saying no to another project because there's limited funding. And so $500,000, $1 million, $100,000, right? We could, if you want to widen into a gas station, $1 million, right? So you put that in there in case we might want to do it. I've got to kick something else out. And so the council's got to weigh, maybe we have $2 million of discretionary funding this year in the CIP. Do you want to do that on park projects, on pavement, on traffic? That's a hard thing. So we're a singular commission, focused on traffic, which is terrific. Got a Parks and Rec commission singularly focused on parks, right?
They got a lot what they want.
Yeah, but we're more important.
I like to think so.
You didn't hear that on the camera.
But, so that's part of the challenge. So that's why it's frustrating. But once we get in that cycle of, okay, we're working on ideas here, we're working on design here, we're working on construction here, you'll see how the cycle starts to work. And then the park projects go the same way, right? We're about to build a new park up at Portola Hills. That'll come in over budget. And so that's competing for our monies, too. So that's part of the challenge of just throwing money out there to save it so we can go faster. If it's a good project, they'll find the money. This has been my experience. It's just, it ties up some other constraints.
Benjamin?
Okay, just go back to the same turn there. First of all, I would say a lot of projects have a different probabilities there, right? Some are more likely have a yes than the others. And we go back to this turn here. Lake Forest Drive and the Trabuco. It's literally the blue eye of Lake Forest City. Right, it's literally center of the Lake Forest here. And when you make the turn there, the northbound Trabuco have a merge line. So you just assume that line was unfinished work of building a dedicated red line there. And my wife named that turn called turn off frustration, just like one car's there. You saw it's some space there, but it's not enough space. You can make a right turn there. I hate people cross through the Mobile gas station there because, icon sometime, honestly, but it's not what you're supposed to do, right? So I hope, I think this one is a more than likely one here. We can find some way to have a little bit side by side there. If they don't go on a major one, like a clear piece of line from the mobile to make a dedicated line here, at least we can go your route there, option 2 or 3. We can have enough space to make a right turn that people can just sneak through there. So either way, I would suggest we can find some priority for this specific item here, because it's pretty obvious we need to do something here, right?
And that's what we're asking for. Is let's
we'll get to
the
that.
commission can prioritize all of these.
Just to I know the level of service of this intersection is C, which is satisfactory, but I don't think that's what we're about. I would not want to say to the city council, we're not going to do this right turn lane because the level of service on the intersection is okay. What we're trying to do is reduce traffic congestion. And that is nothing, well, it has everything to do with the intersection as a whole, but if the intersection as a whole is functioning okay, that's not a reason not to do this. This is to improve flow, get people moving and stop the congestion and reduce that number one concern of people in our city, traffic congestion. And there's lots of things we can do. We're talking about them tonight. So I think that this one's really important.
Yeah, I think, well, it could be a C overall. I think this lane's definitely an F. I think we're more in the A and B category of a city, and I'd like to see that these areas that maybe are the Cs that are having this issue, that they get moved up. And I think you might see that in our priority, and I get that this could be bigger than what we might think, 100, 200, it could be millions because there could be purchasing or acquisition. But I think this is also a priority.
So we have, did you have a comment, Mike?
I do have one more, I'm sorry. And I don't disagree with anything I've heard so far, but I think another problem in the morning on that intersection, there's a crossing guard. And so even if you have a dedicated right, that could back up all the way into the
Very
lane.
possible, yeah.
Because that happens, and it's a big street, so it takes a while, and they can't go through it until she comes.
And that lady that's that crossing guard there, she's tough.
Yeah, so it's just another
Why
point
is
that
there
I
a
think
crossing guard there?
affects it.
Huh?
Why is there a crossing guard there?
Because they got kids walking down to the little elementary school.
Down to Rancho Cañada School, even El Toro, and all the way down to
Yeah, the draw
Serrano
area for that
Junior High.
school is just across that. So you have a.
There's no school on the other side of Trabuco.
Maybe if we get another school. I didn't know that's a fun topic to discuss.
and Santiago Church has a school too. Yeah. So, I think we have agreement we want to do that one, and the next one was Trabuco Road at El Toro. It's the same issue, same concern, same everything, to do a study of that. The one that's here, Bake Parkway from
Really quick, Trabuco and El Toro, what rating is that currently at? Dave, do you remember?
I'd have to look it up. Like I say, everything operates at level of service D or better. Many of our intersections already operate at C.
Okay.
And especially when you start to get, I would say, further from the freeway, the intersections tend to operate a little bit better.
Okay. So this is all in the okay.
Yeah, these intersections all meet our current standard for level of service. But these are good projects. They make it better than it was. But again, it's all about that balancing. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I think they're both great projects. The question is, where do they fit in the bigger picture of capital projects?
Okay, the other one was Bake Parkway, to do a study on making Bake from Trabuco to 241, 3 lanes in both directions. Don't think there's any dispute on what that is, but Benjamin?
I don't have comment there because I'm a little bit concerned about the signal distance between the Irwin Boulevard and Commerce Drive, because there are 3 signals in between the North Pointy, the South Pointy, and Artist Way. So all of 3, 2 out of 3 are 3-way intersection. The other one doesn't have a lot of traffic anyway. So I would just wonder, can you combine our study to whether we have an alternative to the current signalized intersection into the feasibility study for widening the Big Parkway to 3 lane each?
I mean, currently what we have, of course, is signal coordination along Bake Parkway. That's one way to move traffic through that area as efficiently as possible as you can get in those types of situations. That what you're talking about, that inconsistent signal spacing is always a challenge when you come to doing signal timing and stuff like that. That's always the easiest thing you can do to try and make intersections and roadways more efficient and move traffic along. When you start talking about widening, there are, I don't know how other alternatives. You always talk about, if you have an intersection that doesn't have, say, right turn lanes, you can add lanes at specific intersections to separate traffic and make things more efficient. Taking a roadway that is essentially a 2-lane roadway or a 4-lane roadway to a 6-lane roadway would be a major undertaking, but obviously it would increase capacity on that roadway by 50% overall. I don't know what other ideas might be out there. I mean, typically roads of that size do not lend themselves well to, and of the volumes don't lend themselves to other ideas like roundabouts and things like that. You start to get overcapacity on some of those things. So I think we're kind of looking at some of the more traditional ways to improve capacity and throughput. So, yeah.
Okay, done with that subject? Or?
I think this could be possibly, if this goes down the road and it gets completed and the study does recommend it, I think this could be one of the bigger improvements that this commission could be at some point moving forward. I think that's an area that just definitely needs it, and I think that's going to be a huge cost, and I don't know if this will happen in your guys' time frame.
I don't even want to speculate, but it would easily put it in the tens of millions of dollars probably by the time you acquired the sufficient right-of-way to do that. So
you'd have to retaining walls on the Baker Ranch side.
You could this is the kind of project that would end up in a
funding program,
mitigation funding, almost like a citywide funding mitigation.
Well, it could also be
of those kinds.
Could also possibly done through developer fees.
Right, but
Or
unfortunately,
upcoming future projects.
Yeah, I don't. We've had our bite at the apple with all of the developments out there, except for one that you're aware of on Bake Parkway. But
well, there's a new one coming up that's kind of in the background.
Yeah.
Well, I'd hope that it could maybe be thought of when this.
Oh no! Don't. Yeah, I don't. Again, it's one of those things that wouldn't. Yes. Would anyone disagree with the idea that it would be nice to have all of our major
absolutely, it'd be
roads?
awesome, right?
Yeah.
More pavement, the better.
Yeah.
I'm speaking like a true engineer.
So
right?
I have a question that I have no knowledge in. So developer fees with new development, who decides where those fees get spent? And does that come before council in a public sense, or does it just have a dollar amount and then that just comes?
Everything comes before council. So to task something to a developer, there has to be a nexus to that development. So a developer who contributes 10% of the traffic to a certain area could be, reasonable that they'd pay for 10% of an improvement. It's along those lines. So you couldn't task the last person in with, wow, everybody from Mission Viejo who's cutting down here is enjoying this too. That's where they cry foul, right? There are some negotiations with that, but in general, you have to have a connection, or you can have them improve, like in front of their frontage. Those kinds of things are kind of generic ones.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, another suggestion was an additional left turn lane on, not Marketplace, but on
Town Center.
Right. Just past Marketplace, but as you can see here, the left turn lane may be not long enough, blah, blah, blah. So I think that's probably reasonable to put that aside for a minute, unless somebody else wants to keep going. But it did have us on this dedicated right turn on Town Center at Marketplace. Again, there's the picture I gave you, the very top picture. Guys, that happens every day, every few minutes. One person makes a straight instead of a right turn on that right turn lane, and this is what happens. It backs up every day. It's so darn frustrating, and I don't see how a PPLT at this intersection is going to make any difference with that. I just can't figure that out.
You get more green time through green time because you're no longer dedicating. The old rule was you give 30% of the time to 10% of the traffic. So 30% is that those protected lefts that stop through traffic. When you take away the vast majority of it, now you're giving more green time to that, so it'll happen less likely. It won't stop because you still have that potential condition, but it'll happen less frequently. So the question was, if it happens less frequently, where are we at in terms of the need?
I hope you're right.
So.
I hope you're right.
So on the PPLT, though, will that limit the amount of protected lefts that that intersection can make?
It can be very sophisticated, actually. If you can start with, if there's 3 or fewer cars, if you put the right detection, if you give the signal the ability to see what's happening out there in the real world, you can actually set it, if there's 3 or fewer cars in the queue, it won't even give a protected movement at all. It'll just simply say, that's enough, even on a yellow, to clear that traffic. So that queue detection can help decide how much green time, if any, you give in terms of protected. And honestly, that area out there, except for like Christmas and those periods of times, there's a few cars most of the time. So I could imagine that actually not getting a lot of protected time much of the day and much of the time of the year.
Okay, the next one was the Alton Parkway at State Route 241. This is where you're going up Alton Parkway towards Foothill Ranch, and you want to make a left to go on to the whatever direction, northbound 241. I guess that would be that left turn pocket's too small for a lot of cars in the morning. So it's this suggestion just to study an alternative, which could be the timing or a second left turn lane, which I think is fine if any of those work.
Yeah, one of the issues we get not constant, but continuous concerns about is that you have Robertson Ready Mix in the morning. Their concrete trucks pull out into that left turn lane to try to go north on the 241, and you can get exactly one concrete truck through on about a 25-second green because it takes so long for them to get going.
We shouldn't allow them to make that left.
And so that's part of what we're experiencing out there, some of the frustration we get from drivers under normal. If you don't have a concrete truck there, generally works okay. Caltrans operates and maintains that signal for us, but it's those concrete trucks, and we don't expect them to go away anytime soon. So this study would look at whether or not you could put that second left turn lane in. As I mentioned briefly in here, there's some conflicts with the merge on the other side, or whether you would just lengthen the pocket. You would do some queue studies. So that's kind of what that study would look at first.
I like that's an easy one.
Yeah. Okay, next is the Peachwood Road Diet. We're back to this one. So, do we have consensus, without another 30 minutes of discussion, do we have consensus to at least study a Peachwood Road Diet / roundabout? Anybody not want to study that?
I think we're going to talk about priority in a second. It's
Right.
much further down on my priority than the others, but
At least leave it on the consideration list for the discussion of the priorities. Okay? Same thing with the roundabout at Bake and Lake Forest Drive. I don't know if you guys have seen that. It's a 4-way stop right now. The roundabout might be a really good thing for that.
this is my nemesis. I hope on my time here, Dave, we can have a solution here, because this is the one I get the most conversations about from the council, from the community, from individuals coming before us too, that this, you know, I completely agree with you guys. This is not a new stop sign. This is a continued problem or a perceived problem from the community. Either way, it's a problem at some point. So, you know, I'd love to see some type of solution here, and I love the creativity of the roundabout, more so here than on Peachwood.
But I think they're fairly similar if you, in terms of the
concept.
The concept, the side street is about the same. And, you know, Palmwood and Peachwood, in terms of the geometrics of the roadway, the width of the roadways, are almost identical. And so it really, if one works one place, it's probably going to work in the other one. There's modifications.
You got to look at the volumes and stuff.
And the volumes, but generally speaking, in terms of just the geometrics, they're very similar. And that's kind of what staff's thinking was, we study as part of this road diet, you might be able to just plug and play it over here. But certainly it's up to the commission if you want to separate it and just study that, combine it, whatever it is your thoughts are on that, we're obviously here just to work through it.
Okay, and then the last one, I think, was, well, that was it, the Bake Park. But so one that's not on here was one I talked about last month, and I think we got consensus from everybody on the commission was I'll call it a traffic signal analysis of why we're failing. I didn't see anything in here. Can we hire somebody to park their butts on corners of 5 intersections, just to pick a number, to figure out at what time of day are they working as they should or not, and what can be done? Because I got to, honestly, guys, I hear this from everybody in the community. They don't work the way they should. I don't see that myself. I know how they're supposed to work, but everyone...
Every intersection is part of the signal priority projects that we do through us. Each intersection is analyzed extensively as part of that overall program, and then the program is put in place. I mean, you could absolutely send people out to intersections. I think one of the things that we would always have to agree on first and foremost is what is the expectation. Because if the expectation is, and we get these kinds of comments from people, the expectation is no matter what direction I'm traveling, no matter what time of day I'm traveling, I should never have to stop. We will never meet that expectation. So,
but I think that's it, Dave. I'm talking about when you're driving down Lake Forest Drive and you want to make a left on Toledo, and if you don't make the left turn light, you sit there for almost 3 minutes while the guy across from you making a left turn goes, and there's not a car in sight. It just doesn't work right. Muirlands and El Toro Ridge Route doesn't work right. The timing's all screwed up. The duration's all screwed up. I can spend an hour on this subject with different intersections and what specifically is wrong. And
part of it's technology. The signals are not.
But it's the timing. Who sets the timing? And we had this presentation a couple months ago. I understand it, but how they're supposed to work is not how they're working.
I mean, a lot of it, yeah. I mean, a lot of it is technology. You know, you're a human. You're sitting out there. You're looking forward at a location. The signals, the system is in essence blind. It runs on time, which is the lowest kind of technology. It doesn't see what you see. You're sitting there in the car, and there may very well be some sort of a gap that you're looking at, and you're looking behind you, and I say, well, I only see one car. I'm the only one here. Why doesn't it just give me 3 seconds of quick green and go? The technology simply isn't there for the systems to operate in that manner. Then you get to another level where it's driver expectation, and I'll give you a real world example. We had an intersection in my previous life where the queue backed out, and it was a left turn, and we would give the leading left, and then we'd try to sneak in a little bit of left at the end when the conditions were just right. Well, what happened is it would start to give just enough time to get maybe 1 or 2 cars through, and the driver's expectation was, hey, what's wrong? And we would get 4 or 5 cars running that red every time. And so you have to, there's a lot of things in play out there, but the easiest, I mean, I think the most straightforward answer to your question is the technology doesn't exist to see the world that, as we see it as drivers out there at this moment in time. We don't have it. There are tests being done for, we talked adaptive signal control. We talked about traffic management centers where people could literally see the world and go, you know what, that queue's backing up. Throw a few more seconds at it. So there are other areas and places and technologies that can manage signals more in the moment. We don't have that technology here now, and that's part of what we see. And so we base it on time, and this group of cars is going to get released, and here it comes, and we favor that through movement, as you know, during those coordinated times. And the side street and the left turns, we're going to wait when we're sitting in those particular lanes. And the theory is, for longer travel, whoever you are in this world, once you get onto and into the major flow, you're going to make up your time because now you're going that way. But if you turn off the side street, go down to the next signal, turn left, come back out, turn left, turn right, turn left, you are going to get frustrated because you are going to see a lot of reds as you follow that particular path. The answer is, could we put money aside, or could the Commission recommend to put money aside to do some sort of study either locally or to help us all better understand where the state of the art in technology is and what it can and can't do? absolutely, if you wanted to recommend something like that.
There might be, we might need to go out there on a corner and watch with you and maybe bring Dave Pickrell out.
Some of our consultants.
He's one of our consultants that does the traffic operations in the signal and talk through expectations and limitations and just maybe spend some time with you in particular to and then go forward with that. I'm thinking more in depth at one location first. We'll sit down and do the math and make you do the calculations to really understand and challenge us and our consultants and stuff like that, and maybe walk through it in more depth is what I'm sensing.
Yeah. If I sat down with somebody at an intersection, it'd be pretty easy to show them what the problem is. And it's always duration. Not timing, duration.
In which direction?
Pick one. Today I was driving down Muirlands crossing Lake Forest. And it let 5 cars through on a green light, and then it won't turn red. Huh? Makes no sense. Why would that be?
Those are all great
All the
questions.
cars back up on Muirlands again. It's just, maybe the light was good. But I'm going to just drop it right now unless anybody else, because we could spend an hour on this subject. But
I think maybe we should do that. Maybe
this is the frustration I hear constantly from people in the city. And it's not that they expect, their expectations aren't the issue. The problem is the light timing and duration's messed up. It doesn't work. And when you guys keep talking about synchronization programs, that increases people's expectations they're going to get green lights more often. And the comment I always hear is, the red light synchronization program. So, or the ARLs, the always red lights, and it's just maddening. And Chinook and Serrano. Chinook turns green, Serrano turns red. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. It's got to be able to work better. How do we make it work better? That's my question.
Let's define an area and let's really dive in. I think to me that's the solution of really understanding what is the definition of right. Is it a green in every direction at all times? Is it if it's always red? Well, that means it's always green for somebody else, right? So we need to define the problem, not just it's always bad. Always, I can't do anything with that. But maybe we sit down and let's pick one. And let's really dive deep into it. To me, that's maybe a better one to try to ease the frustration. At least you understand. We'll share the pain with you, and we can walk through it. That seems like a solution.
Sure.
Can I do that?
I know Mr. James, this is a subject dear to his heart, too.
I share the concern, and I hear about it from people quite frequently. I think you have some valid points in there. And I think sometimes in addition to looking at the problem ones, look at the ones that work well, because I think that becomes an expectation. And again, there's a few that I'd go through that literally you sit for a minute, there's no cars coming, it turns green, everybody goes, and there's no traffic. Now again, lighter flow, I get that, I understand those issues, but I think Jim brings up a good point. I think it is a pain point for a lot of people in the city that don't understand it, either whether their expectations but there's some signals that work very, very well, and they work great, and the ones that don't work very well are frustrating. So, again, I'm happy to work
those ones will work very, very well for the other person going the other direction.
No, I think your son.
You see what I mean?
Work good for everybody.
I'll give you one. There's Serrano and El Toro works very well. If you're going to make a left into the neighborhood, you sit there for a minute. Then all of a sudden both lights turn red. You get both turn movements simultaneously, and it goes back to the other traffic. Again, depending on what it is. There's a lot of flow that comes off of Serrano from El Toro, and so that one to me. And I go there. I have a friend that lives in the neighborhood. Go there a lot. It works very, very well. It's not you don't have to sit there
for that path of travel.
For that path of
down path of travel,
Road,
right?
Yeah, down El Toro Road, left on Serrano, right? But I think it works well if I'm sitting on Serrano, trying to go onto El Toro. I think it works great if I'm going, I'll say is eastbound on El Toro, going left on Serrano to El Toro. But, I mean, it really seems to work well in all four directions, but it just reacts, it seems, to what the traffic flow is pretty regular. So I think there's some that work very well.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's...
And that's what we need to kind of look at.
I don't want Jim to feel... I do hear that same concern from a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
Very frustrated where they think it works well in other cities and they don't feel it works well here. I have some completely opposite where I get the green lights and it just goes. And, but you do hear it a lot. You do experience it. I drive
That's
around.
why you guys are here, frankly,
Well, I think the other thing
because of those complaints.
I just to clarify my points a little bit. I don't go to work early in the morning, so sometimes I think, well, like I don't see some of the stuff here, but I think, well, I'm going at 10 o'clock in the morning. Nobody's there, right? So it's good for me. But I just think the other people, you're doing rush hour. It's a little bit different.
Yeah.
I came up Bake tonight from Newport Beach from 405 all the way up Bake, and it was a zoo the entire way from the freeway to Commerce Center. Don't do it every day. Did it today. So that's just mine.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, let's talk about priorities. Are you looking for us to do 1 through 6?
6,
numbers,
7, or 8.
can
Or
we do
8.
Can we do a high, low?
It looks like one's missing on the list. That was the bake at Trabuco.
Bake Trabuco to 241, that one?
No, the bake Trabuco adding the second left.
Oh, that's already part of the program?
Oh, it's already in.
That's already
Yeah,
going.
that's funded. That's under design. So that's the design process. That'll be in construction.
Right, those are already moving
Yeah.
forward through the CIP process. What we're
These are the front end. These are the studies, right? So this is the front end of a CIP process, or you got to prioritize these, and everything else is kind of already in the works, if you will. Which I don't think you had any real comments or complaints about those. So we'll move those forward. Now we have some study money. What do you guys want to do in terms of prioritization? We can't do everything. So what do you guys want to do here? Or prioritize, and then we'll find how much we can do.
The only one I heard any consideration on is bumping the Peachwood one down a little bit, and then we can start from there. I think there's...
Yeah, this is really going to be hard to do.
Huh?
This is going to be hard to do because you can have 5 different opinions, but let me make a suggestion. Maybe what we could do is make Trabuco 241 3 lanes would be 1, based on comments I've heard from all of you. Just throwing this out, guys, just as a starting point. That Bake Trabuco 3 lanes would be number 1, and that...
Could I ask a question, Jim, before you clarify?
Sure.
How much money is set aside for that? Is there an amount that...
For studies,
Yeah, for studies.
we have 50,000 about left in this year's budget. We would anticipate that council would give us another 50,000 for next year's
So we'd have
budget.
100,000 total. For
we
studies.
believe
50 for sure. I would anticipate another 50.
Assuming we have 100,
Yeah.
to guide your discussion.
Right.
I
So
think, yeah,
that's about half of these. So we thought if you could prioritize them all,
Oh, that's...
then we know what our budget is, and we can do as many as we can.
That's based on what's happened in the past without a traffic commission. I think the world's changed for the council now. You have a group of people that have come together and said, hey, if you really want to reduce traffic congestion, these things should be done. And it's not, to me, it's not 50,000. If it's 500,000, that's what should be presented to them. Now, they may say, now, guys, we can only give you 100, and we'll use your priority list. But, if they believe and we believe that these things truly will help reduce traffic congestion, if it's $250,000, I think
Well,
we're not going to have a big problem.
And we can certainly make the request to fund all of these, or more, or whatever, known to the city council. That's no problem at all. We're working within the constraints that we have.
Well, I think the request needs to be to fund all of these things, but we can give it a priority. If you've got to drop something, my suggestion might be that we drop the Peachwood Road Diet study. If anything has to be dropped, drop that one, and maybe the Regency Park thing.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
So just to throw something out there, the ones that I heard the most comments on in conversations for sure would be Lake Forest and Trabuco. So number 3, I think that needs to be moved up. I think another easy win that there was a lot of excitement about was the Alton at 241. So I think that needs to be moved up. And then I think as well the 3 lanes on Bake also should be in that band A of ones that should be considered. I also like the roundabout studies too. So those would be my suggestions as far as being up at the top, are those ones, but it's just the consensus that I...
Could we do high, medium, and low instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? It's going to get. You're not. We can spend all night here trying to get everybody to agree to a sequence.
However you guys want to do it.
I would. Yeah. Let's try it this way. Let's throw it based on what Jordan said. If we do the Bake Trabuco 3 lanes as a high, the Altnet 241 as a high, the Lake Forest Trabuco right turn lane as a high, the Trabuco Road median right turn as a medium, and the Regency Park as a medium, and the Peachwood Road Diet as a low. And what was the one that wasn't on the list, Jordan, that you just mentioned?
It's on the second page, the Lake Forest Bake
There
roundabout.
you go, yeah.
It's not specifically called out in the study because we were considering including it with the Peachwood Road Diet, but obviously if you want to pull it out and make it its own separate
If that was a
study.
high, I think that would be a high also. And then the right turn lanes on Town Center, just do that as a low, because that's depend on the PPLT thing. So, basically, folks, item 1 would be medium, 2 would be low, 3 would be high, 4 would be medium, 5 would be high, 6 would be high, and then the next 2 pages would be a low and a high. So that way you have 3 groupings, right? Here, City Council guys, we think these 3 things are high priority. These are, meaning if you got to cut something, don't cut these high ones. Cut the medium and the low.
I can support that.
You think that's a good approach? I'll make that motion if you guys understood what I said. I hope you got all that down.
Pretty sure I got it written down.
I say, did you get it, Tom? I was afraid to do it in ink because I was going
Medium,
to change.
low.
I didn't know what to.
Medium, low, high, medium, high,
Medium,
low, high.
There you go. That's exactly right.
Medium, low, high. What was the next 3?
Medium, high.
Medium, high,
7 and 8 would be a low and a high.
low, high. Gotcha. Okay.
I think that's a fine way to do it. That's fair. And again, we gave ranges for these. We'll get proposals for it. We can always do them on the cheap end. We can do some are going to be in the higher end, depending on interest and level and things of that nature.
So that would be my motion. Seconded by Robert. Carol, you got all that down?
Between the 3 of us and the video and the recording, I think we'll be okay.
So please vote. Okay. Unanimous. Folks, that was a big deal. That's progress. That's a lot of stuff. Very important
you guys
stuff.
you have not had what I would call kind of a low-level meeting yet. You guys have tackled some very meaty and weighty items pretty much every time you've gotten together. So I appreciate your patience. We appreciate your comments and working with us and getting through some of these things because they're important. Staff's priorities to get them out and the council's priorities too. So thank you for doing that. They won't all be this way. Some of them you'll just have residents yelling at you, and it's a whole different ball game. But in this case, again, this is a
Peachwood
really
Road
big
Diet,
subject.
they'd show up and yell at us. So next on the agenda is Commissioner comments. Commissioner James, do you have any comments?
I do, just a couple. First of all, I happened to encounter this last couple weeks at La Madera Elementary School, afternoon pickup time. There's a parking allowed for a ways, but they back up all the way to the parking lot, which forces traffic that's going southbound into the center median oncoming lane just a little bit. I hadn't experienced that before. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's part of the whole parking problem around the schools that are always there. But
Right. We're actually meeting with, at the request of one of our council members, we're going to meet with the school board and the principal or school district representatives and the principal to talk about some of the ideas. But we've looked at that. We do an annual school review now, and so it's what it is. We've got about 20-minute little problem out there in the morning and the afternoon, and we're
it
working.
doesn't look so bad until you drive it. I just watch it, and again, I'm familiar with them from other schools that I've dealt with a bazillion times, but that one literally almost pushes you into oncoming traffic. And again,
Really bad.
this one day a guy happened to try to dive in, and so his whole tailgate of his truck was sticking out.
And there you go. Right.
Yeah, so that really ruins it.
Oftentimes,
That happened to a lady, and she got a ticket and came to the last council meeting to complain about it. She's saying, I knew better.
Understand. Secondly, today I experienced, again, getting up early in the morning to go to work like a normal person. The trucks that are working on Glen Ranch and Saddleback Ranch and one of those developments are stacking up in the Starbucks parking lot now, waiting for